a lot of you here. This is so exciting. So, you're either here because you really love Star Wars, or you're like really in conflict or dying in conflict. So who's here for Star Wars? Okay. And then who's here because you're having problems with conflict? Okay. Somebody yell out, why are you here? You get another sticker. Get a whole sheet of stickers. So you saw this on here and it said conflict management. What do you hope to learn from today? How to handle a problem. What kind of conflict things are y'all dealing with? No names, just what kind of conflict things you dealing with. And if you answer, just yell out real loud. Students? Staff? Faculty? Parents? Okay. Now, I'm going to ask about the staff conflict. Is sometimes the staff conflict that you deal with, you're just like, really? This is what we're talking about? And we've been talking about it for a month? Okay, great. So this is a Star Wars theme. I promise I'm not going to use too many Star Wars references for those rare few of you who have no idea what Star Wars is. That's okay. Even if you don't know what a Jedi is or how to use a lightsaber, I really think you're still going to walk away with something from this conversation. I am not portraying to be a Jedi master at all. We are all Padawans, aka students, who are learning. I just think this is a really interesting topic and one that we're in a place where we're going to have conversations about some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. I do want to let you know that what we're not going to cover today. Conflict is not all bad. There is good conflict in like the exchange of ideas and the debating of ideas to come up with a good solution. Because I can tell you, really bad decisions have been made because people failed to manage agreement. When somebody has an idea and nobody wants to rock the boat, so they go with this idea, that's a whole other presentation. So I wanted to let you know the day that I had the epiphany to do this particular presentation. Okay, literally, I was like, logged on to SACRAO and submitted this session. It was a normal, ordinary day. Let's say it was a Tuesday. And somebody was in my office talking about a conflict with a coworker that had been going on for a really long time. I was listening, because that's what you're supposed to do. But in my mind, I was thinking, I'm really tired of this. We thought we have solved it. Now it's back again. It's not even that big of a deal. How much work time has this wasted? How much of your time has this wasted? How much of my time has it wasted? And I was just sitting there and I was really I was thinking if I only had like the mind powers where I could like change this person's mind. I was pretty much at this emotional state. If only I could say, you do not have a problem with this person. You will go back to work and never speak of this again. But I realize I am not a Jedi, and neither are you, and I don't have that luxury. So I'm sure that I'm not the only one that has ever dealt with conflict, been the initiator of conflict, because I'm honest, guys, some of you are living on the dark side and you need to acknowledge that you are the source of some conflict. Okay? Probably all of you that picked like Darth Vader and Emperor stickers. I see there were a lot of people. Matt's telling on y'all. He said a lot of people picked the dark side stickers. So I want to get the room's feeling about conflict. On your phone, you should be able, I know there's internet, a little bit of connectivity issue, but to go to menti.com. This is anonymous. It's not going to charge you anything. You don't have to put in anything. And I want you to enter in this code because it's going to prompt you for a code. I'm going to close this just for a second so I can bring that up. There we go. So, what words come to mind when you think about having to deal with conflict in the workplace? You get 3 choices. So I want you to enter in those 3 choices. When everybody enters in, it like flips out for a little bit. It'll catch up. Get your last ones in here for a second, real quick. Okay. All right. If you haven't entered it in, kind of stop because it's still flipping out. Okay, well, you can keep entering it. So there's 3 big ones right there. Stress, exhausting, frustration. The bigger the words, the more people entered those terms. Annoyed, miscommunication, seriously, somebody wrote seriously. Scary. I'm glad somebody wrote scary because we're going to talk about that. Goodbye, I'm not sure what that means. Weary, distrust, gross, ugh. I'm looking for a positive word. Drama queen, awkward. I don't see a positive word. Somebody just wrote students. Resolution. Okay, so why is it all negative? What does it do to us? Somebody yell it out. Raises your stress level. Exhausting. A lot of you put exhausting. What's exhausting about it? Over and over and over. It's the mental exhaustion. And what's exhausting about that? It's tiring. It drains our energy. Okay. So it looks like everybody pretty much agrees that nobody wrote like fun, exciting, exhilarating. I'd be really worried about y'all if that's what you put. So let's go back here. So what's the cost of conflict? The publishers of Myers-Briggs Assessment did a study on conflict in the workplace. And so here's several statistics that I really found pretty shocking. I won't read them all, but I'll focus in on the 49% of conflict as a result of personality clashes. And so some of you may be thinking, well, that's my personality. I'm not going to change my personality for people. What is that? But I wanted to highlight that one because I think that comes up a lot, and there actually is something that you can do about it. People are wired differently. We approach situations differently. We view stress situations differently. If you have a methodical, detailed person working with somebody that's like, let's go, let's get it done, da, 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 some conflict could arise. So in our office, we have done like personality behavioral assessments. Has anyone ever heard of True Colors or the DISC, D-I-S-C? There's also Strengths Quest. I haven't done it. But these assessments, if you've not done it in your office, I highly encourage it. Done by someone who can do it well, and done by somebody not in your office. Because if you do it by somebody, because it highlights your weaknesses. So if you have someone in the office do it, they're going to be like, well, Kathy told me that So have somebody outside the office do it. But what it highlighted, really for me, is how I interact with other people and how I could be creating conflict in others. So like, for example, on the disc, there's 4 different quadrants, okay? You've got your fast-paced, let's get it done, I'm hyper. You've got your slow, methodical, detailed individuals. You've got your people person, I really want to care how Matt's feeling right now before we move forward with this project. And then you've got your task people. They're like, not that I don't like Matt, but I just really want to get this job done. So imagine having a hyper people person with a slow, methodical task person. And you can definitely see where some conflicts can come in. But if you understand, okay, I'm about to go into this situation and work on this project with someone who is a lot different than me, I can sort of acknowledge that and make a few adjustments. And this is coming from experience, because a gentleman that I work with is slow, he thinks, and he's methodical. And I was realizing I was coming into his office like a tornado, like, hey, man, like, da-da-da-da-da. And I finally realized that he would just sit there and stare at me, and I wouldn't wait for him to answer, because I'm like, hey, I got this idea with that. Why aren't you answering? What do you think about that? I wasn't even giving him time to think. So if you just like manage and think about how you're coming across, that can help with some of the personality clashes. 2.8 hours a week are spent dealing with conflict. Y'all get all bent out of shape when people come in 15 minutes late, and we're spending all this time dealing with conflict, which what I'm going to talk about is how we can make it stop and not go on. And then raise your hand if you're a manager. Are you spending 20 to 40% of your time? Who's spending more than that? Y'all need another sticker? Make yourself feel better. Yeah, it's really pretty interesting. But here's the thing, it's going to happen. So why does conflict happen? Well, conflict it's when one interest of one party doesn't match up with the interest of another party. And that could be anything, okay? It's as simple as that. Now, on the left-hand side, you see goals, resources, values, opinions. And all of that is quite obvious. But then look at the right side, cognitive strain. So those of you who are dealing with conflict and are sick of it, maybe you're creating some more conflict somewhere else because you're just, you've got a strain. Or think about if you just started a new job, or you have a really severe deadline, or they implement some new mandate that you have to put in really quickly, and your mind is focused on that. You may be less self-aware of what's going on and let things go, or not interact with people as aware as you should. Perceptions. Are perceptions correct? No. Can perceptions be wrong? Have you ever perceived something wrong? Did it make you mad when you found out you were wrong? Maybe. Did it make things awkward if you were trying to interact with somebody that you perceived something wrong? Maybe. It depends on how severe the perception was. But here's the thing with perception. In my work, I have seen situations that have gone, it's maybe not outward conflict, and that's really what I'm talking about today. I'm not talking about, Matt, you're just going to get picked on because you're right in front of me. I'm not really talking about like if Matt comes into work and I'm like, I don't want to look at you. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like the passive, aggressive, annoying, that kind of stuff. But that kind of stuff can breed. And it's just because there was a misconception about something that nobody bothered to clarify. So it just kept going and going. stress. We all talked about stress from work and home. And that's another thing. Matt could walk into the office and I could say hi to him and he doesn't respond to me. And all of a sudden I'm thinking like, well, Matt doesn't want to work with me. And then later on we're at a meeting and something happens and I like snap back at Matt because you didn't say hi to me. Guys, I've seen this happen. And maybe Matt had a really bad morning, you know? So those are some things that can affect. And fear. Fear gets down a little bit more visceral into maybe having conflict with somebody. Like imagine like a scared feral cat. You're gonna pick it up and it's gonna eat your face off. Okay? So when people get scared, this fear of failure, fear of being wrong, you know, I've worked on this project for 3 months and no, it's not failing, you're looking at it wrong. I mean, those sorts of things. And fear of making people mad or fear of not being liked. And I think sometimes that's how conflict can keep going because you don't want to address it with an individual because they may not like you. So those are kind of some of the things that we're going to talk about. So we're about to engage in a group discussion. I know the room is kind of loud with the air conditioning, but I think if we're loud, we can have a good group discussion. I'm going to present to you 3 different scenarios. Now, all 3 of these scenarios have elements that I think you will find a connection to somewhere. They are all real, and they happened. But I have changed them up so dramatically that anybody would not really realize that I was talking about them. Just trust me. To protect the innocent and to protect the not so innocent. So we're going to have a conversation, and I keep saying conversation because I believe that conversation is the key to getting through and managing conflict. You can slap on a rule. You can move a problem person, but that doesn't necessarily fix what's going on. Are you ready? Our story begins not long ago in a university not so far away. Friday office attire was given tighter restrictions. For the most part, everyone in the office remembered to follow the rules, but John would always wear unsanctioned flip-flops on Fridays. To make sure that John was in solid compliance, Frank, the office manager, sent an office-wide email to the entire staff, reminding everyone that dress code violations were not tolerated. Frank knew John was the only one at fault. He didn't feel comfortable approaching John one-on-one. What's going to happen? I'm sorry? Somebody's going to think it's about them. Is John going to get the message? I'm sorry? No. No? What, so this goes out. Has this ever happened to you? What happens? Tyler, what happens? Oh, it just happened. Okay. Oh, it happened last week. Was it about flip-flops? Okay. So, who's at fault here? Frank or John? Some people say Frank, some people say John. Both? Okay, what do you think, what should have happened before we got to this part? Have a conversation. Why didn't they have a conversation? Y'all are gonna. Yeah. What do you think was going through the mind of Frank? Like, what was John gonna do? Throw a chair? We don't. But if he's a violent employee and it's been avoided, now that's a whole other issue. I know, if that's going to set him off, then we've got a lot of problems. But let's find out what happens to the rest of the office here. So after the email was sent, worry and fear infected the office as groups huddled in corners analyzing their clothing and discussing if they were the target of the email. However, John, the only true flip-flop felon, did not pick up on the subtle hint, and he continued to wear his flip-flops. This created friction with his coworkers as they believed he was getting away with breaking the rules. So how do you fix this?
Maybe Frank needs some more tools to help him have those difficult conversations.
That's excellent. Frank needs more tools to help him have those difficult conversations. Like what? What would a tool be? How to approach? Oh, some role playing. Now, what if you are in the office and you are not Frank and you are not John, but you see all this going on? Yeah, this might reflect poorly on John, which he could be a great individual, or Frank. Yes, sir.
But even more so on Frank, because it undermines his authority, because everyone else thinks John's not Frank.
Right. Now, if you worked in an office and you are not Frank and you are not John, would you go to John and say, hey, stop wearing flip-flops? You would. It depends. It depends. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on the relationship. But here's the thing. Hiding out and not addressing the situation doesn't really solve anything. It just makes it get a lot worse. So why are we so scared of possible conflict? I mean, why? I've been scared of it. Why are we scared of it? Why is it uncomfortable? What do we think is going to happen? It's the unknown. He said the outcome is unpredictable. But seriously, what is going to happen if you're like, dude, stop wearing flip-flops? It's not, your toes are out. You don't have to insult his toes. No, I went the wrong way on that one. I don't want to, but it's flip-flops. We are not saying, John, you are a terrible employee. Your work is worthless because you wear flip-flops. Is that what we're saying? So why is it so hard? And I use flip-flops because really it also spans into attire. Your skirt is inappropriate, those kinds of things. Yes? Oh, you don't want to single one person out. Right. And she brings up a great point. And that's why I think a conversation with John is critical. Because what if it doesn't say no flip-flops? It says work appropriate shoes. And he doesn't know what work appropriate shoes are. I mean, I know we deal with some of our younger workers on professional attire, and they choose some things that may not be professional. And so you have to explain what that is. So, but being non-assertive doesn't really get that job done. Yes, sir?
I'm a guy. I work with all ladies. I have been on the south end of the conversation about the difference between a flip-flop and a sandal.
If it flips and it flops, it's a flip-flop.
I usually have ladies come to me and ask me to approve their flip-flops or their sandals rather before they purchase them because they want to know if they would be able to use them.
But honestly though, that is an important point, and we're talking about clothing, but it can apply to a lot of other things on the lack of clarity of the definitions of what things are. Because I remember our whole division went into a big dress code thing, and the person that created it was female, and she was using a lot of terms that men may not know. And I remember sitting by a gentleman in the meeting when we were discussing it, and he would lean over and go, "What's a capri pant? What's a wedge?" And I realized, it may be, and it's clothing, but it could be other terminology that you have perceived that somebody understands. And all it would take was a quick conversation, and you can get that cleared up.
2 words, trouser socks.
Trouser socks?
Yeah, I know what that was.
I don't think I know what trousers. Are they the tall socks?
I think they're just socks with ladies socks.
Oh, they're lady socks. I would not have known that. A knee high. Oh, I didn't know that. So it's not personal. It's not personal. And I think if you approach it with empathy and saying, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know this," and also in private. At the staff meeting, you don't say, "John, stop wearing flip-flops." You need to do it in private. And then listen. Maybe he has some kind of a foot problem. That's the reason he's wearing it. Okay, we're going on to our next story. This one gets a little bit more difficult. In a strategic move, Jack is now sitting by Sam. In order for Jack to do his job, he needs information from Sam. Unfortunately, Sam is not motivated by deadlines and is routinely late. Jack is finding out that this isn't the only issue he has with his new desk neighbor. Sam likes to listen to her voice messages on speakerphone and eat smelly tuna fish sandwiches. In a passive-aggressive attempt to show frustration, Jack acquired a large file cabinet and placed it between their cubicles. He then put boxes and other obnoxiously large items on top so that all line of sight to Sam was blocked. Sam became frustrated because she now has to get up and go around the blockade to converse with Jack or call on the phone from 3 feet away. Has anyone been here? I'm seeing nods. Thoughts on this? Yes. Yes. They're peers. Who's the boss? Thank you. Where's the boss in all this? Tony Dan. Tony Dan is the boss. Thank you. Right. This is allowed to grow. Now, they're not yelling at each other. They're just doing these annoying little things. But it's about to explode into something a little bit more. Exactly. Right. And so, have you all worked with people who you're expecting, you cannot finish your job until they do their part? And is it really frustrating when it doesn't get to you on time? Of course it is. Of course it is. Why haven't Jack and Sam figured this out on their own? Could be personality issues like what we talked about earlier. Yes. Jack, but why has anybody ever been in this position themselves? Okay, to be honest, you don't have to raise your hand. Why are we afraid to say anything? What are they going to do? But then that, yes, that's right. A lot of times you don't feel like it's your place. And you don't want to go up and talk to your boss. So this is what happens. Sam is sick a lot. The supervisor calls a meeting to discuss the subpar work. Jack loses his cool and yells across the table, so there's your screaming and yelling. Sam countered with mumbles and silence, so we've got stonewalling. Jack says it's Sam's fault for being always behind, and Sam is blaming Jack for being aloof and difficult to work with. Okay, now you're the supervisor. How do you fix this? I work in higher ed. It's really hard to fire anybody. I think I heard somebody say fire them both. How do you fix this? Sit down, talk it out. Are you afraid to talk about it?
Depending on how serious it is, sometimes the mediation might be good.
Yeah. But to let this kind of behavior continue, it's very dangerous, but this is what you have to realize. That there's egos involved here, because if Jack admits that he's wrong, then he loses. It's like if ego becomes involved, it's like you're losing part of your self-worth if you're wrong. And then Sam will lose if she admits that she was not turning things in on time. So there's a lot of things. And in this kind of environment, you've got to have a safe space that's already created for people to be able to admit stuff like this. So that's something that kind of goes beyond just sitting down and talking about it. You kind of got to think about what environment that you're working in. And is it a space where you can say, hey, your stuff is due, but I see that you're late all the time. What's going on? And I think if you approach it from, let me help you solve this. I've had those kind of discussions with people that are chronically late to work. And I know they have health issues, and I know they have issues. So approaching it, it's awkward. But approaching it from, hey, we really want to help you in any way we can. I need to understand what's going on. It's pretty enlightening. Do you have a question or comment?
What do you feel around it, though, when that person is asking somebody or other people around asking, is there a kind of picture behind, like, if I told you or something like that, and that person is probably just...
Well, then, I think if you're in a supervisory role, you're going to have to step in and then just kind of micromanage and say, you're not getting it done. I'm either going to have to take this away, or I'm going to have to kind of do a status check every day, every week, or every whatever to make sure that, you're getting back on track. And some people may not realize that their stuff is being waited on by somebody else. That happens. But almost calling it out to them and having a conversation and allowing them to talk lets them feel heard and lets you have a little bit more insight into the situation. I'm not saying it's all going to turn out rainbows and unicorns. It may lead to, if they do stand up, scream and yell and throw a potted plant across the room, then that's, at least there's a problem that you need to deal with, on a deeper level. So there's really two main things when you're talking about conflict, if somebody's in it. It's concern for myself or concern for others. So right now in this scenario, Jack and Sam are competing. They have a high concern for themselves and a real low concern for others. You really don't get anything done that way. So a low concern for yourself and a low concern for the other person is avoiding, which is what we saw in the first one. That really doesn't help anybody out either. Now, it does depend on the situation, which one that you go with, because sometimes you may just have to accommodate. Collaborate is the ideal thing to do. And of course, if you compromise, somebody's going to lose something, but it probably wouldn't be the end of the world if Sam didn't eat her tuna fish sandwiches at her desk. Okay, last story. It gets a little bit more serious. One day, after an on-campus meeting, Mary offered to drive her coworker Jill back to campus. Jill got in Mary's car and burst into tears. Slightly alarmed, Mary asked what in the world was wrong. Jill proceeded to purge all the suppressed conflict that she had been carrying for a year about Mary. Jill felt that Mary hated her and purposely derailed all of her ideas. Mary never invited her to go get coffee and was cold and unapproachable. Jill was visibly upset, and Mary was extremely uncomfortable. Okay, you're Mary, and you've got Jill, and you're trapped in a car. What do you do? What did you say? Let her out. And this has happened to me. What do you do? How do you handle that? Anybody reading that suddenly feel really uncomfortable? I get real now, and you shook your head, and that's fine because some people are okay with it, and some people aren't. I get really uncomfortable when people just spontaneously cry because I am terrible at that. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should like touch them or give them a Kleenex or make a sad face. I'm completely uncomfortable. So what would you do in this situation? I'm sorry? Pull over and try to I would recommend pulling over and having a conversation. If you were married, would you be offended? Or how would you approach this topic? The initial reaction probably is, what the heck did I do? What are you talking about? I don't even go for coffee that much. Oh my gosh.
I might actually feel bad because she thought that, especially if that was a non-filter. Somehow I gave her that impression.
Yeah. And I think people are going to have a different reaction because this is deep stuff. This isn't, flip-flops. It's like Jill to burst out like this has really been harboring stuff for a long time. Now, some people may react with, whoa, you're out of line. Some people may react, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible person. What have I done? And then there's two people crying in the car. Right. Ambush. But think about it. So Jill picked a time that was private and away from other people to just Why hadn't Jill addressed any of this before? No, you can't. And that's a great point. Don't stay in your office. Go for a walk. Go get a coffee. Go sit outside. Not in somebody's car where they can't get away. But, yes. You know what? You're right. It could be. It could be that tipping point. Sometimes you wait, and something external happens, and it will just tip you off to go. That's like the stress level tips you off. Let's see what happens. Mary was offended at first and wanted to know what specific interactions had caused these issues. As Jill spoke, she realized that some of her perceptions were actually inaccurate or misinterpreted about Mary. Mary realized that she saw hints of tension, but she chose to ignore them. So this is a lot. How are you going to handle this? This is a lot deeper than, hey, dude, stop wearing flip-flops. Yes? In the real story, Mary is the supervisor. Oh, that just got a different reaction. And that changes it too. So Mary is the supervisor, and Jill is just, and that takes a lot of courage. She probably should have done it a little earlier, but I'm not discounting Jill at all for what she did. How do you fix this? Just think of Jill's job performance. If she's been carrying all this around, what do you do? How do you fix this? Yes? Yep. That's a good point. She said, like, if her ideas were derailed, maybe they were derailed because there's something higher up that Jill doesn't know about. But Mary should have been better about letting her know that that's why it couldn't happen. Something very important to make about this is that if you are presented with this out of the blue conflict, understand that the person is coming from a really vulnerable position. And guys, it can be about something that you think is so minor. I don't even want to talk about the turmoil over the office refrigerator that we have had. And it may seem really trivial, but you can see somebody's body language. They're visibly upset, red, crying. It's really bothering them. And things can stress one person out a lot differently than another one. Anybody ever fought or had conflict over the thermostat in your office? There we go. I need the tea towels. We don't have tea towels. That's awesome. We have paper towels on the wall. So this is where it comes into a little bit of emotional intelligence. Have y'all heard of emotional intelligence? It's not really a new thing. I'm going to tell you, it's really hard to practice sometimes because sometimes our gut reaction is to feel offended or embarrassed or you're attacking me. Emotional intelligence is the capacity of an individual to recognize their own emotions and how those are affecting their behaviors, but also how they're affecting others' behaviors and how others' emotions are affecting the other person's behaviors and how it guides your thinking. So like low emotional intelligence, you become fixated on the person and they think that caused the problem, and you're thinking that they're on me, they're mad at me, instead of, this project failed because of Larry. It's all Larry. Well, sometimes it is Larry, but don't let those hijack the situation. So here's a good example of emotional intelligence. And I am not saying that I am queen of emotional intelligence, because I still have days where I'll get all sappy about something stupid. But this past spring, I decided to spearhead a change in the registrar's office with one of our processes that I knew would rock everybody's world in a negative way. I mean, it was going to turn everybody's boat upside down because it was a process that they'd been doing forever, and I was going to change it like 2 weeks before the semester started. But it needed to happen, and there was buy-in from the people that knew it needed to occur. And so I was ready for and I got a lot of it. I was ready for the student on social media to be like, I was ready for it. And when it came, I was like, okay, I'm not going to approach it with a negative. I'm going to take this conflict, I'm going to focus on the positive. So it was exhausting, the amount of conversations that I had to have. But once I explained, I understand where you're coming from. How is this affecting you? Because that helped me learn things I didn't know. This is why we changed it. Do you have any other suggestions? And we just talked it out. And it really went well. But I didn't crawl under my desk in the fetal position and cry, because I was expecting it. And sometimes that's hard when we make a major change and then everybody attacks you about it. So having self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, just stop. If you're familiar with Star Wars, the Jedi, they step back, they meditate, and then they go in. Just calm down a minute and think about what's going on. Relationship management is really important, because you're going to have, that relationship may stop, but it may come up later. So you really want to try to maintain those positive relationships, and don't assume that there's negative intent behind the actions of others. Don't always assume that, because it isn't. Emotional triggers. Emotional triggers are something from your past experiences that can come and like crop up at work and affect some of your work behaviors. So if for some reason you have an intense fear of failure or acceptance or something like that, it could be you didn't get invited to this important meeting and you're all of a sudden assuming something the worst when really it may not be. So try to understand your emotional triggers as well as those of the other people that you work with. And then I don't know about you, who has kids? My kids are always telling me to stop yelling at them. Like, I'm just loud naturally. But even my husband tells me it's your tone of voice. And I know that is my problem and I need to work on it, is my tone of voice. So I'm going to leave you with a couple, well, more than a couple, of things to remember. Remember to listen. That's what our opening speaker said. Listen. And I know my opening line was about me not listening and thinking about Star Wars, but I'm telling you to not do what I did. Have empathy and try to think about where the other person is coming from. Take the you out. Don't say, you are making this a problem, or you. Just say, here's the situation, and when this process happens, these are the negative ramifications. People are smart, they're going to realize that they're in that process. Move on after it's over. So you've counseled John on his flip-flops. Please don't bring it up in 3 years on his evaluation. Let it go. Let it go. Meet on neutral ground. We talked about that. Know when to get involved. Has anybody ever been asked to get involved in a situation that has absolutely nothing to do with you? It's not junior high anymore, and we need to leave those situations alone. I have been asked to get involved in something that was a huge conflict. People didn't work in my office. I didn't work with them professionally, and I was like, no. No, thank you. I don't want that. Never manage conflict on the fly. Stop and take some time to talk about it. At least you can agree on what the conflict is. If you can't solve the problem, at least you can find out what the conflict is. Because with Mary and Jill, it was far deeper than coffee. Wait a day, take a walk, use the force, calm down, and don't catch conflict and don't infect others. What do you think I mean by that?
Don't get sucked in with somebody else's conflict.
Right. Maybe you're talking to me about somebody that I've never met and you're having this big conflict with them, and so I meet them and I'm like, I don't know, I'm gonna have conflict. No. And don't infect others. Take the high road, and if somebody says something like, well, I'm having such a problem with Frank or whatever, I can say, and I do this, I say, you know what, I don't know what you're dealing with, but I've really never had a problem with Frank. We've always worked well together. Be the bigger person. Because people want to be like, wah, wah, wah. Don't feed into that. And the last thing is that don't squash the conflict. This presentation isn't conflict annihilation or conflict forbidden. It's conflict management. And you may be thinking, why am I going to explore conflict? Full disclosure, in scenario number 3 with Mary and Jill, I'm Mary. That took a long time to explore what was going wrong. We have actually done a presentation about it. We talk about it. We both grew so much from that. And she is an amazing employee. But if I had shut it down or been very negative, it would be a very, very different story. So I believe that we are at the end of time, but I do encourage anybody to stay and ask questions if you want to. And I'm going to leave you may the force be with you as you go out and have the courage to manage conflict, engage in courageous conversations. It's going to be okay. You can do it. Thank you all for coming.